user.
Yeah, also we're talking about you, man. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay. So whatever you do at the back end from a coding angle, from databases, OS level, what appears on the front end is an application or a software wherein you have a nice little window to operate, and you click on things, you enter the data, you do any sort of this is the front facing for the for any user, right? So, Chidi, would like to understand what's your background in the IT field?
What is my background?
Okay, what work you've done in IT?
I've done Linux, I've done AWS,
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit of auditing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, from a development angle.
No, from operations. The DevOps. When the developers write the code, push
Mm-hmm.
it to the Git repository. We
Mm-hmm.
pull it from the repository and do all the testings that needs to be done. And
So you are into QA and all, QA. You mean the QA
right,
testing?
QA testing, yes, yes. And then we could use Ansible or Kubernetes or Docker to as a container,
Mm-hmm.
then before deploying into production or the live environment.
Right. So, in case of application software, these are the front ending. I'll say the piece which the users will use, which the users are supposed to use. Now, you might design a program for, say, I'll go back to a simple example of a bank of a banking module.
Hmm.
Okay, in banking, you have a lot of modules for customer services, for loans, for any given. I'll say, like for your savings account, for your loan processings. Then there are tens of other sub modules. We have Cosmos, who has a banking background as well, right, Cosmos?
Yes.
Yeah. So, in case of banking, what is a key thing in an application? One of the most critical, or I'll say the most relevant part in any banking application, which will determine the bank's income.
That should be deposit
Okay.
because
Any other?
it's from the deposit that the bank can get. They will debit you for COTs and all those things that will be accruing at the end of every month, and they charge maybe if you overdraw your account and all those things.
Mhm.
Deposit should be much more. Is what I think that will give much money to the banking industry than any other thing.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Uh,
Anyone else?
I mean, if you borrowed money to say you borrowed money to finance your car, so the finance charges. If you borrow money to buy your home, the
that's overdraft.
no, no, I'm talking about if the bank borrowed, if somebody borrowed money from the
Mm-hmm.
bank to buy their house,
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
yeah, the interest rate will be another income that the bank will be making when the person,
Well, the loans that the bank give with money you
right,
deposited in the account.
right,
Right, right,
exactly.
right. Chidi,
Hmm.
you hit the nail.
Hmm.
You hit the nail. So, in any banking app, for bank, major their income source is their interest income. Now, for setting interest, for having those interests, I need to have the right parameters. Okay. Suppose I am in a category wherein we the house say for a housing loan, to buy a mortgage housing loan, you have an interest rate of say 3%. Okay. And in the application or the software which I see, there is only one administrator or couple of administrators who can change the rate. And the base rate is changed from say 3% to 2.9% by mistake. What will happen?
There'll be a loss of income to the bank.
Okay. Now getting why an application control is required, especially in case of a key in banking industry, Cosmos, if you're aware, there are parameter settings.
Yes,
Okay. If these parameters go wrong, whole income of the bank would go wrong. I mean, would get affected.
exactly.
Okay. So that's why the application control or the software controls are important. If now why this specific example is taken, because if your now the access to this can this access be given to all?
Could you say that again?
Okay. Can this access be given to anyone who wants? You can change it.
No, it has to be
No.
privileged access, right?
Right. So it has to be a very specific personnel who need to have access to this
Hmm.
interest rate component,
It
who can
needs
change this
it
interest rate.
needs to know access.
Yes, he needs to no, access is one part of it,
Hmm.
but uh, only say two or three people should be able to change it.
Right.
One, because he is an administrator or someone, or somebody who might be his backup or who might be in his team. Maybe a couple of guys only should be able to change it.
Hmm.
Right? And even if they change it, it's important that there is a log which is generated, okay, which says that the interest has been changed, and somebody has accessed this module or this part of the software, and that needs to be changed, that has been changed, and it should go to an independent person for verification whether this change is valid or no.
Okay.
Okay. Now this is a back end process of log monitoring and all, but when I say application control, this is a very critical application control that the parameter settings for, especially for interest rate, should not be changed. Or if they are changed, there is a log generated, and this has been reviewed for any of the for any discrepancy or any unauthorized change is not there, or the changes which are done are only authorized changes. So this is an independent review, and this is a critical application control. That's what I can refer to.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the other question was with regards to what will I ask as an interviewer, for, especially in case of an software controls.
Right. Yes. What would you ask that
Mhm.
only somebody working in the industry would know
Mhm.
the answer? Because with my research, there's a lot of questions on Google.
Mhm.
However, when you actually do the interview, you find out that there are those questions in Google, very few of them do not actually come up. What comes
Mhm.
up is really things that you have to be doing the work to know.
Mhm.
And that is why I would like you kind to dig deep down to kind of get those
Mhm.
things. Yes.
Okay, Shiri, what questions did you encounter?
The questions that I encounter,
Mhm.
uh, okay, well, I'll give you one. Then while you were wrestling with it, I'll look for some more. Walk me through your day-to-day activity at work.
Okay.
So that is that is um, a typical interview question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Other.
Or how do you test change management? How do you test application control?
Okay. Now, this is a generic question. They have application controls.
Huh?
Is it a generic question that you get? How do you test application control?
Um
Or they have something layered in this?
no, no, I'm thinking that's a question they can ask if depending on your resume, saying that you've done all those kind of testings.
Okay. Now, what do you mean by day-to-day activities? What do you answer?
Day to day, what do you do every day at work? What do you do when you go to work?
Okay. So, what is your answer for this? As an interviewer, I'm asking, what is your day-to-day activity?
Well, depending on how would I say, depending on how the class is going, I wouldn't really tell you what my day-to-day activities are because
No, no,
we
no, 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 no. I'm asking in terms of work, not in terms of any other thing.
okay.
Suppose you are doing.
In terms
Oh,
of work, I will say that you know every day I have 2 to 3 controls that are assigned to me,
mm-hmm,
and then I have to look at the control objectives and the control activities,
mm-hmm,
look at the evidences,
mm-hmm,
if possible, look at the policy or the framework that they use in forming their policy, and then
mm-hmm,
compare those to the evidence that I'm given, and then do my testing,
mm-hmm.
making sure that employees are following the policies for effectiveness and for design effectiveness and operational efficiency.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. Uh, so, what do you test in a control? You are assigned two controls. So, what do you mentioned that you test a control? What will you do, test in it? How will you test it?
Well, our test of design
Mm-hmm.
and test of effectiveness.
Okay. Now, what is a test of design? Can you quote an example as to what you did?
Well, test of design, I will take one sample
Mm-hmm.
from the population,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll test to make sure that is working as designed. For example, um, if it's access management, I
Mm-hmm.
would take a sample and see how the access was provisioned, who was the requester, evidence of
Mm-hmm.
the requester initiating the access, and the
Mm-hmm.
access whom they sent it to, either the department administrator, who is the one that reviews the request and the access that is requested based on the role of the new employee, and if that access is not appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
the administrator will cancel the request,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess send it back. And the
Mm-hmm.
request can be done through ticketing or email. But if
Mm-hmm.
the access is appropriate, then the
Mm-hmm.
administrator would grant the access and
Mm-hmm.
send it to the system admin, and the
Mm-hmm.
system admin reviews the approval. Um, and I think either before they send it to, reviews the approval. Like in case of access management, they reviews the approval and then grant the access. So
Mhm.
I will test all the documentation that was involved in that aspect, making sure that the access requested was the same as the access granted.
All right. I think you have got a lot of things right, but only thing is you jumped onto step number three again.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, so let's stop
Again.
that jumping. What?
Okay. What you'll do first, you will obtain the documentation of policies as to how the flow of uh, work will be like. Okay. Now you first need to understand who is the process owner or who is the person who will grant the access. Now, what we have normally seen in our audits. Let me share my insights.
Okay.
Most of the time, if a new employee joins in, is the HR who informs the IT team that so and so person is joining and create ID.
Okay.
Okay. Now this will be only for say access to the systems. This means it can be Azure directory or Windows 80 directory,
Mm-hmm.
wherein his and creation of email ID, and that's the initial I'll say the entry point in any organization now. Okay, so I'll obtain a policy saying how the user ID will be connected and how it will go through. It will be approved by someone and initiated by someone, and the service desk team or the administrator team will create that based on the request. Okay, now you've got all other steps right as to whether it is authorized or no. Now, once a person is granted access in the system through this process, how will he? I'll say then his project manager or the person is required to say an access to an accounting department, to an HR, or to say an to a specific applications that will be determined later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that will be determined based on the project manager or his relevant person who to whom he is reporting. He will decide what access will be given to him.
Okay. So the number three I'm jumping is what? The requesting of the policy.
Yeah, you will first ask for a policy or a procedure as to how a user. Mostly, it's more defined in the procedures, but that will be a step-by-step approach wherein they will mention that the HR will raise a ticket or he will send an email that so and so person is joining. These are his credentials, his name, and his etc. For uh,
Okay, so
for
walk us through the process then, so that we'll follow your process. So I won't be jumping. I'm jumping
no
based on the
you
stuff
you
that I've
you
learned.
you whatever you told was correct. Okay,
But now I
I'm
don't
saying
know where the third step is, so that's why I
okay.
want you to
What was
start
okay?
from
What was
beginning and
missing?
connect it.
Sorry, can you repeat it?
I said, based on what I said, I don't know which one is the third step that I'm jumping. So
Because
if you could take us from beginning,
okay,
yeah. So
that's why I said the first step is the reading of policies and the procedures for granting access.
okay,
Okay, then understand. Then you, after reading that, you need to go to the process to the person. Say he's a system administrator or um person in an IT team, senior person in an IT team, or maybe a junior person also in an IT team, to
mm-hmm.
understand how the process is working. This is step number two.
Okay,
Okay. Step number three is from where you started. You
okay,
said that I'll go and check whether how the then you will start with the actual process steps as to how a person is granted access, whether through email or through ticketing system.
mm-hmm.
Then the administrator will check whether the permissions are correct or no, and whether this should be taken up for access, whether this person should be granted an access or no.
Okay,
Okay, so you got all the other steps right.
okay.
Okay, but only the first and the second step were first go and ask for a policy and a procedure,
Okay.
and then you go on to the next step uh, for interviewing the system administrator, and then you do the actual testing as to how a ticket is raised or how an email is sent. Is there any form or no? Then what are the content of that form? What are the content of the ticket that say Chidi is joining today in the organization, and what is the level of grant of access that will be done. Okay, so these things are determined in a ticket. Then in the service desk team, who is the one who is responsible for creating the user ID, and if that person who is doing the who is also responsible for creating an ID, she should check whether there are proper authorizations or no. Sometimes it is multiple departments or multiple people would require approval will be required for granting an access to a system.
Okay. And now I have a
Okay,
question.
so
Go ahead. Finish first, then I ask you a question. Go ahead. Shannon, are you there? We lost you. Okay, he's there.
hello.
Okay.
I think I lost in between big talk because of the network.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you were saying something. I said go ahead and finish. Then I'll ask you a question.
I could not hear it because my network was gone for last 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, tell me.
No, you were going through the process. So I said go ahead and finish the process. What you were saying.
Okay, so that's how I mean you answered it whole process correctly. But the only thing was first you need to review the policies and the procedures. A lot of times they will send you controls from middle and they will ask you to test it. Okay. Now, if that is the case, understanding the whole process, you would require some policies and the procedures to go through to understand that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you because you said the second step is going to the IT administrator. And I wanted to ask
Mm-hmm.
you, what if they have given you the controls and the evidences that they have,
Mm-hmm.
including the policy? So
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine then the policy will explain the process flow that you would
Right.
that you would have gotten from the system admin or the IT
Right.
flow. Okay,
Mhm.
okay,
Okay. Now there is one more thing which can help you in this. There are flow charts.
okay.
Okay. Sometimes you have the flow charts wherein you get that uh, you get the process flow. This is more convenient than
Policy, right?
reading the whole process or a procedure,
Mm-hmm.
wherein they will show you that a new user joins in, then the request is raised by the HR, then the access to this will be granted by, or the permission for this will be approved by so and so department or so person in the organization. Then it will go to the help desk, who will check whether the request is valid. Yes, go ahead. No, then dispose of the ticket, or raise a new query as to why this access is required.
So you can get the flow chart from the auditee.
Yes, you can get in certain cases. Yes, definitely.
Okay. If they don't have it, they might give you something similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Chandan, please, can we say that as a rule, Before you can test any control, you need to have the policy and the procedures.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Now, most of the time, there are written policies and procedures available. But if it is not available, then you will have to interview and understand what is the procedure being followed.
How do you determine who to interview when none of those things are given to you?
Okay. Now, if there is no procedure, written procedure, you will go and sit before the system admin. First, you will check if the organization who is responsible for creation of user IDs or your system team. Most of the time, it is the system team, IT team head who, or somebody assigned in the IT team who knows how the user access will work. So you'll go and ask for organization who is the process owner for this one. Now you go before the process owner, sit with him and have an interview with him. Because unless and until you don't interview him, how will you know how the access controls will be provided? Okay,
Yeah,
so you will ask him.
there's always a process owner or control owner from the auditee company. When they
Yeah.
give you a control, they will tell you the source of that control, the name, who brought it, and that person is the process owner.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, Chidi, are you sharing anything? I'm just seeing only our names.
No, I'm not the teacher today, so I'm not
Okay.
sharing
Is he
anything.
sharing anything yet?
No, I don't think so. He's just going over, because we had the questions on application control yesterday.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he's going over it and explaining how application control goes. So if you have any question on application control, please go ahead and ask him. That's what he's doing.
I'm trying to get more practical insights into the application controls.
Mhm.
That is really what we need, please. The practical application.
Okay,
The
when we say an application, this means the
step by
software
step
which.
method of doing all those things.
Okay, so application or a software audit is a huge thing, and it will vary from any organization to organization. I mean, in case of Windows or in case of say an operating system or a database, you can have those the relevant part being monitored, or there are certain fixed questions which you can have. But in case of an application or a software, it will be a very wide term to define it, because it totally depends on the functionality of the software and what it is doing. Though the basic principles of auditings don't change, but the controls and the methods of working in any software will change. It may be in a bank. For a bank A, it might be a different controls or software. For B, it might be a different software, or the controls might be different. So it changes from bank to bank and from any industry to industry, or any given application. It will change from one company to from one software to another. So it's a very 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 wide term, I'll say. Um, Okay. So, Chidi, I guess I have answered your questions on the access control part, right? On the interview
Yes,
part.
yes, you did, you did. So now,
Oh.
based on what you are saying
Mhm.
that the auditing part is the same, but the things we will audit will definitely vary, right?
Right. Right.
Okay, so
Now
give us an
okay.
example of
Mhm.
how what is the testing
Mhm.
procedure that we can use to apply to different types of auditing situations.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Now I'll give you two examples,
Okay,
comparative examples,
great.
uh, and from two different industries.
Okay,
Okay. One is banking,
okay,
Second is uh, manufacturing.
Okay.
Okay. Now in manufacturing industry, most of the time, rather, it's a rule of thumb now. They are using ERPs
Okay.
like SAP. SAP. You have who is GD guest?
Yeah, is the Rasta
GD Perry.
Chidi. Mhm.
GD Perry. Okay.
Yeah, Chidebere, yes, he's doing good.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. I
and
He
he
wants to,
pronounced it very well.
yeah, he wants to change from 97.
You should rename it. Okay. So two examples. One is from an manufacturing industry. In the manufacturing industry now, anywhere you go, you have an ERP, enterprise resource planning. Most of the times when I say enterprise ERP, one most popular one is the SAP.
Hmm.
Then you have Oracle ERPs. Then there are numerous other ERPs like PeopleSoft, Microsoft Dynamics, and I mean, there are tons and tons of ERPs available in the market. Now, there is one critical cycle I will mention is with regards to purchases. Okay. Now, in case of purchase, uh, there are certain steps which need to be taken.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, any purchase starts with one specific part is with regards to
Purchase
your
purchase order, right?
right purchase order. So before purchase order, there is one more thing which is purchase requisition.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Now, why do I need this material? So somebody from the manufacturing department will say, I need material X. Uh, Means we have done a lot of audit in manufacturing industries as well. So say a specific process requires a material, say iron ore or scrap iron for melting that iron and producing those goods. So I require 1 ton of iron today, 1,000 kgs of or 1 ton of iron for my next part. So I'll raise a requisition that I need 1 ton of iron, and this has to be approved by the manufacturing department's head, who will say, we require 1 ton because we are expecting our output of so many parts of say 5,000 parts. So we need 1 ton of iron for that. So there will be a purchase requisition. After the purchase requisition, the purchase department will then it will go to the purchase department, uh, who will then see the if this purchase requisition is being approved or no. Most of the time in the system the person who is the approver will be the purchase department head, or even the head from the same manufacturing unit, who will be saying that this material is required. Then purchase department will raise a PO based on the uh, purchase requisition. Okay. And this PO has to be approved by the purchase head. Somebody in the purchase head department clerk will review the purchase order, and then his supervisor will approve the purchase order. Okay. Now, once the purchase order is approved, there are sometimes uh, organizational requirements as to if a purchase order is say up to $50,000, one person can approve it. Okay. There are if a purchase order exceeds 50,000, two people will approve it. And if it exceeds say 5 lakh rupees for sorry 500,000 US dollars, then the head of the department then it will require approval not only from two people, but maybe the board or multiple people should approve it. This happens especially in case of fixed assets or major asset acquisition, wherein you require the approval of the board for this one. Okay, so the purchase order will then flow, will be generated once all the valid approvals are there. Now these can be system driven. I mean, this can be like a simple tick in the purchase in your software, wherein he says this is approved and this can go ahead. And it can also be through your I'll say through an email which says that this purchase order is approved. So these are the two methods of approving it. Or there can be some organizations who still insist on having a physical signature. A printout will be taken of that purchase order and that will be signed and sent it to you. So where the application controls or the software controls would come into picture is that who are the people who have access to the purchase order for raising a purchase order. Okay, then who are the people who have access to approve the purchase order and whether it is configured in the right way or no. Any questions?
Okay, now that you just described the flow of the purchase. So, as an auditor, how do I audit that process?
Okay, now first is you will obtain a workflow as to how the purchase department works.
So it's practically the same way we tested the access management, right?
Now you will ask for a list of users who have access to this list of users who
I'm
have.
sorry. Go ahead. Let me not interrupt.
Okay. Okay. Now you will ask for a list of users who have access to raising the purchase order, approving the purchase order.
Okay.
Now you will ask whether they have a segregation of duties matrix.
Okay.
Okay. Now then you will compare this manual segregation of duties with the system generated list of users who have access to what. Okay, now say 5 people are having access to raising a PO, or there are 2 people who have a right to approve the PO purchase order.
Okay.
Okay, now you obtain a list and you see that there are 7 people who have access to for raising a purchase order, and there are 4 people who have access to actually approve the purchase order, which is not as per the organizational requirement. Now your document says only 5 people are required to have access to raising the PO, and actually there are 7 per people.
Okay.
So that becomes an audit point. Now because you obtained a list from this application, whether this so 7 people need to have an access, 5 people need to access, 5 people should only have an access. That's why. So that will become an audit point. You will go and question the management why 7 people are having access when only 5 are required to have it. Okay. Now another system control, what I will see is that a purchase order is can you have the same purchase order for everything? Number. Okay.
No.
So there will be a sequential purchase order, like say your series might start from 10,000 onwards, and the next purchase order will be 10,001. It cannot be 10,003. So this is a software control which is inbuilt into the software. When Sanjay was mentioning as to sequence check or yesterday in the software part, he meant to say that there has to be a sequence of the software generated controls, which do not permit certain things. Now there should be a field in this purchase order part wherein you cannot edit the purchase order number.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you've raised the 10,003 number of say sorry 10. I'll shorten it a bit. So you've raised the purchase order number 103. Now the next purchase order should be automatically be 104.
Right.
Okay, so this is a software or an application control built into the application. Now, if somebody has a right to modify this field from 100, wherein the next PO generated will not be 104, it can be it has been modified to say 106, then this is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these are the software controls which are built into, and you need to check it from the front end side whether these are working correctly or not. Getting the point now.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
getting the point.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I know will be helpful to us
Hmm.
is that it looks like you said different applications or different controls exist. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do we generate the questions to ask? Because we didn't ask this question when you were asking me about access management. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't explain. Well, that one was access, yeah, access control management. But I think in that one too, we should have also asked for a list of the people that give access and
Mm-hmm.
see if there's also segregation of duties on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, what we would like to really get clarified is what is the core questions that we as auditors can ask when we are confronted with different controls that we need to test, so that
Mm-hmm.
we can really learn that. I mean, once we get an experience we can add to it, but the main core questions we should ask when we're testing a control, so that we can get the right information that we need. Like you mentioned, get a list of people that
Mm-hmm.
that have the access uh, to initiate what purchase orders.
Purchase order.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to know those questions. When you get a control, one, two, three, four, five, six questions are key for you to ask to gather information that you need to test it. So that when we get to a job, if we're giving controls and evidences, and we look at some of those, and we see there are certain things missing in our questions, we can ask those questions either
Mm-hmm.
to our audit manager or to whoever that we are reporting to. Am I
Okay.
making any sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And again, if you can help us with the answer, the sequence of answers to these questions, like you describe this purchase order control, look at how
Mm-hmm.
you put the stages. If you can be written down for us, so we have it offhand, so it will help us
Mm-hmm.
to use it to apply it in anywhere we are going to do any exercise.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
Just.
get what I mean?
let me help you out a little
Like,
bit.
like yeah, interview likely questions, interview
Okay.
questions and
Okay.
answer. You know.
Yeah, we're throwing too many things. What I'm trying to say, what we need to do, let's take it one by one.
Okay.
Let's get the core questions as an interviewer. I mean, as an auditor, that we need to ask every time we are given a control to test. We need to ask this set of questions to give us a proper understanding on how we're going to conduct that testing.
Oh.
That is number one. And when he says it, then we can listen to the tapes and make our notes. If he
Okay.
doesn't
Okay.
have the time to write it down, But if he goes through
Okay.
the steps on the video, we can then say, okay, he says step one is this. We'll write it and make our notes on that one. Then after that, I think the interview questions will really fall in place because the interview questions will really revolve around that. But if he has interview questions to give us, that will also be a plus.
Okay. Okay. Just a second. I'll be back in 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay.
Just excuse me for a minute.
Very soon, we're not going to worry about interview questions. We're going to be doing the job and worrying about how do we do the job and look professional. See, the interview is going to be very temporary. We're going to overcome that pretty quick, but
Amen.
then doing the job is where they say, well, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. So,
Yeah.
so doing the job is going to be the key, the key. And once we learn how to do the jobs, I mean, if you have to interview 20 times, once you talk to somebody, they know that you know what you know.
Yeah.
hmm Like in your
So if God help us, will make it, get the interviews and get jobs. I believe we can be there for each other.
we're gonna be
Have
there
a
for
interview.
we're gonna be there for each other because, like I keep saying, IT is not an isolated field. IT is a collaborative field. You cannot
Mm,
be by yourself. Okay, even is a teamwork.
yeah.
Even at work, you are in a team, and the team communicates. So that's why communication is very, very important. You need to know how to communicate to your team. Hello. Communication is very, very important. You see. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we need to be together, and anybody that has a question can reach out. Like we said, there's no stupid question. You might think that is a stupid question, but there's no stupid question. So uh, that's one thing
Is,
we need to do.
No,
is
no,
there any stupid answer?
Mr. Noah, sorry to cut you short.
That's okay.
Uh, are we gonna be taught on SOC 1 and SOC 2? Because
Yes, 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 definitely.
okay.
This is the guy that specializes in SOC 1 and SOC 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. After this class, and then there's a operation systems and database class that he has. After that, then it's gonna be the SOC 1, SOC 2, and then they will wind it down with the practical ways, the practical on doing the controls. Because they've given us tons of controls. So he will teach us how to do the controls, and then we can do the rest of them and then bring it back for him to take a look, see if we did it right.
Okay. 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 All right. I think the rule of thumb, and I'll just share something. Uh, okay. Now, the rule of thumb in case of any segregation of duties are, this is the rule which is called ARCC.
ARCC, okay.
I'm
Okay.
not actually. Mr. Chenda, are you sharing your screen? Because I
Yes,
Yeah,
can.
my screen.
I can see the screen. Can you see it?
No, I'm actually seeing his name.
Huh?
I'm seeing it.
NTD, I think it's something at your end.
Okay,
Okay.
let me hang up and call back in.
Are you watching through a phone?
Yes.
This is
I don't know. I think you're gonna might have a problem with the phone.
Okay, let me call back. Let me call back.
Okay.
okay. Now this is a rule of thumb which is applicable to any given environment. Okay. Now, person who initiates the transaction should be different from a person who authorizes the transaction.
Right.
Okay, there should be a segregation between initiation, recording, authorization, and a person who is comparing it.
Okay.
Okay, now to quote you an example, let's go back to the same example of, or should I quote a different example of a banking? Okay, let's quote an example of banking. It will be easier to understand, right?
Okay. Now, before you go to the banking, we really appreciate this. This is really, really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next thing we need to, you can either do it before you go to the next example, or maybe after the other example. What Darnell was talking about, he mentioned writing it down, but I was saying maybe if you narrate it like a step by step or 1, 2, 3, we can watch the
Mm-hmm.
video and write them down. So just like you gave us the process of segregation of duties, now when we get to any job, we can use
Mm-hmm.
this now to apply to any control that we are testing to make sure there was a segregation of duties.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we
Mm-hmm.
need we need a similar thing to apply to an audit. First of all, you have to ask for a list of users. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, you have to ask for policies. Number three, you have to check for segregation of duties, so that
Right.
so that we know 1 to 6 or from A to Z, that when
Mm-hmm.
we ask all these questions, we have really covered what we need to generate so that we can do the audit or do the audit effectively.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, when I say why I'm going back to segregation of duties,
Hmm.
because that's one of the because a person who initiates the transaction,
Hmm.
okay, he cannot authorize it,
Yes, yes. This is a very, very crucial part of auditing.
right?
Yes.
So, I'm talking from an auditing angle now.
Hmm.
That the person who initiates the transaction should not be authorizing it. Then there should be a person separately recording it,
Hmm.
and there should be an independent review of that.
Right.
That is comparison. So when
Right.
I say, okay, now the purchase transaction in the PO process was initiated by the manufacturing department.
Hmm.
They were the initiator of this one.
Hmm.
Okay, who authorized it? Who did the recording part? Somebody in the purchase team did the recording part.
Hmm.
Uh,
So please,
uh,
what do you mean by a recording of transaction?
Recording of transactions means we want, say, one ton of iron
Yes.
for our manufacturing, for
Yeah.
the next operations. We want to procure so and so iron ore so that we can
Okay.
have the next part of for the manufacturing of say 10,000 parts or something will be required. So
Yeah.
this is a transaction which has been initiated. So this is recorded by a purchase clerk who will say that we need a PO of, he will raise a purchase order in the system. So what he is doing, he is initiating the transaction in the system or recording the transaction in the system.
Mm.
Okay. Then what next step will be? Somebody should authorize it.
Mm.
Okay. Now say up to 50,000 US dollars, the purchase manager himself can approve it. Okay, not only what is important is not only the quantity but also the rate which will be applied. Okay, they may have processes in between wherein they have they will have a competitive bidding, or they will invite multiple quotations, and they will invite certain, or there might be certain vendors who with whom they have already negotiated the rates, and they already have the rates and the purchase order ready in the system. Only they need to authorize the quantity. So these cases will also be there. Okay, what is important that whether this purchase order is approved or no. So that has to be approved by the purchase manager, or somebody from the manufacturing department should also authorize it. So that's on the authorization part. So the person who has initiated the transaction is different. Person who has recorded the transaction is different. And now the purchase order is approved. So that is authorized. So he is also different. Okay, now there is last thing, which is comparison, or I'll say somebody who needs to independently review this. So if a person who is it can be an internal auditor, it can be an accounts team which verifies independently whether the purchase order raised is correct or no, or the transaction is correct or no. So this is comparison part. Okay, so as an auditor, what I'll see in this case is whether there is a proper transaction flow, and whether the person who is initiating this transaction is different from the person who is authorizing it and who is recording it. So that's the main idea of in an audit when I go in depth. So when I say segregation of duties, it becomes important to understand the process and the controls which are there.
Wow.
Another example will be from a banking industry. Banking I'm using because it's something people are very familiar with. So
please, before you go to the banking, this custody of assets, could you explain it again, please?
Okay.
Custody of assets.
Custody of assets means the person who actually is the process. Say a purchase head will be responsible for the whole process. So he has the custody of the assets, and this is more from a say perspective of physical assets than logical assets here. Okay, so when I say in case of a environment, say purchase environment, the purchase manager will have the custody of assets. Okay, he's the process owners, I'll say, not the custody of assets means he's the process owner in this case.
Okay.
Who has the overall responsibility. To quote you an example in banking industry, now you have requested a bank to for withdrawing say $5,000. Okay, you go to a banking counter and you give the check to a banking officer, that bank cashier, that I want to withdraw $5,000. Okay, so what will be the next? How will the transaction be initiated? Okay, this will be first the banking clerk will note that I have received check number 1001, and this is the amount which is mentioned, which is $5,000. He will record it, but he cannot authorize it unless and until that goes to his banking operations manager, as we had discussed the other day. The operations manager will review it, and if the signature is correct, and if you have the requisite amount available, then he will authorize the transaction. Okay, then based on that authorization, which is there built in the application, right, he won't physically sign it off. He will physically sign it off and also approve it in the banking software, that okay, you can go ahead with this transaction. Once that transaction is authorized in the system, then it automatically comes to the banking clerk or the cashier, and based on that he will issue a $5,000 cash to you, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, there is also a process of comparison, or I'll say a reconciliation in the banking industry. So, Cosmos, you have worked in the banking industry. So, at the day end, you will see whether you will have a list of all the cash withdrawals which have happened in the day. Say you have 50,000 cash withdrawals, and at the day end, you compare the cash in hand, which is say which is required to be after say all the deposits and everything, it is required to be 9,000, and you come across that the actual balance is 8,000. So you will reconcile where is the 1,000 gone, right?
Cosmos is asking you. I think he muted his phone.
It's muted his phone.
Is he there? I think he's there. Okay. Cosmic Ben. Okay, go
Can
ahead.
you please repeat the question again?
Oh, Cosmic Ben, you sleeping?
Not really sleeping. I couldn't get exactly what he said immediately.
He's talking about bank reconciliation. At the end of the day, you guys will do bank reconciliation to balance the activities that happen during the day, right?
Yes, yes. We'll do a kind of call over to make sure that all that was posted is what's in the system every day before we run end of the day. Because after the transactions for the whole day, you have to do call over from your teller, from the teller, the teller or the head of operations or somebody like that will do the call over of all the transactions that are being done on the day before we can run end of the day. And immediately you run end of the day, all those transactions will now enter the cloud.
Okay, what he was saying is that at the end of the day, the total of the transactions that came through was 9,000, but you're
Okay.
only seeing 8,000 in I guess checks or deposits. So you're going to have to look to see where the other 1,000 went, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay. So before the day end, there is a comparison which is done independently by, say, bank manager or a senior officer in the organization in the bank to check if
Correct.
things are correct or no. So that's where the comparison comes into picture.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is another example in the banking industry.
Okay, that is really neat because I keep hearing segregation of duties, which I know the duties
Hmm.
needs to be separated, but I haven't seen it in this kind of manner where authorizations, recording, custody, and comparison. So I think this is nice. Thank you.
That's a good one.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is from a segregation of duties perspective.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, uh, in case of applications, I mean, Cosmos has worked in banking industry, and he'll appreciate the fact that every module, every thing that there are so many modules in the banking in bank like say loans, advances, deposits. There can be things like bank guarantees and mortgages and tens of other modules. So every module will have their own type of control, right? Or every software will have their own kind of a scenario wherein they will uh, they have this application controls. So you need to first understand what the application does in this case. What is the application functionality or the software functionality to form an opinion on this one.
Mhm.
Okay. There can be cases wherein the management has done certain segregation and this is not being followed.
Right.
Okay, or the system does not support it. Say now I just quoted an example of a cash withdrawal of $5,000 should be authorized by the by the operations manager. What if this amount is say $50,000, which is a big amount, and it requires approval of two people. Cosmos, there can be such scenarios as well, right? Okay, so there should be built-in application controls or a software controls which require that uh, A will authorize transactions up to say $25,000. About $25,000, B or a C person should also authorize it. Two people will be required to authorize it.
Sure.
Okay, so these are built in the software itself. If this is not functioning correctly in the software, then there is an issue. So when I say application controls, it means that the authorization should happen through the software. The transaction should not go unless an A and B both approve it.
Right.
So once both approve it, then only the cashier should be able to pay the amount. So this is the control which is built in the application.
Okay. And we will know by getting screenshots of
Yeah,
or the logs or whatever.
yeah. What you can do in this case, you can ask for a walkthrough.
Okay.
Okay. Now the now you know the process that up to $25,000 A will approve it. Now you know after 25,000 B will also be required to approve it. Now what you will do is you will ask for a walkthrough. Can you show me that if a transaction is being initiated by say in a live environment wherein you get a check of say $26,000 and not even say $25,000. So the cashier initiates it. Then you see whether as per the workflow can he pay it instantly. If he can say that pay now, he cannot do it. Okay, ideally he should not be able to do it. And then you will ask you where does it go. So it goes on the desk of A. It says that A needs to authorize it and B also needs to authorize it. So we will check authorizations of both A and B in the system in the workflow, and once both approve it, then only the cashier should be able to pay it.
Can I give a scenario in that area?
Yeah.
Okay, like let's say a transaction, like if you're using Wells Fargo Bank, assuming I'm banking with Wells Fargo, like let's say in California, and I came to Houston to withdraw money. Before ever they pay money, they pay me. It depends on the volume of money I want to withdraw. They have to confirm from California branch of Wells Fargo to be sure that I am the owner of the cash, and also there must be a kind of confirmation from California requesting or asking the Houston branch that they should pay so amount of money to the beneficiary.
Great.
Okay. Now.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I guess now core banking applications are used across all the branches.
Yes.
Okay. You worked in Nigeria, right, Cosmos?
Yes.
Okay, in the banking industry. So you have those core banking applications.
Yes.
Which have all the signatures, all the check ranges are which should be there. In a banking, if I come with a check to you, I'm already issued a checkbook, right? So in case of a checkbook, I might have a series from say 15,000 to 15,020 being assigned to Chandan. So Chandan comes and asks you for cash with a check number from I've been assigned 15,000 to 15,020. 20 checks leaflets have been 15,001 to 15,020. Now 20 check leaves have been assigned to me. But suppose if I come with a check number say from 15, which is 15,025, will it be a valid request?
No, it's not a valid request.
So will your software allow it?
Repeat your question again.
Okay. Suppose I come with a check number 15,025
Okay.
and ask you for cash, and I've been assigned check numbers from 15,001 to 15,020.
Mm-hmm.
Will the system allow it?
The system will not allow it because your limit is 15,000 and not 15,020 instead of but what you're trying to withdraw is 15,500. So the system will not allow it to fly. It will need an upper person that will give the authorization for the whole thing to fly. And it depends on the amount of money that is in your account at that very point in time.
Right. So this is a system control, right?
Yes.
So this is what the application controls are all about, or the software controls are all about. These are inbuilt in the system. If these are not being followed, or then the whole software process itself is development process is also questionable. Okay.
That's good. Thank you so much.
So when I say application controls, also software controls, you will have uh, people who need to authorize the transactions, and there are some built-in checks in the system which prevent certain transactions from happening. Chidi, what's your question now?
Okay, now what I had asked you in the before is the same way you broke down how we should test segregation of duties.
Mm-hmm.
We would like you to break down the same way how we will test, to do an audit of different controls. Is it only segregation of duties that we test when we're testing a control? I think it's
Segregation of duties is important because that is the core of any testing.
okay.
Okay. Now, in any given testing environment, there will be certain person who is initiating the transactions, recording the transactions. What from a compliance perspective or from a process perspective, we need to check whether this process is being followed or no.
Yeah, okay, let me help you to understand what we want. Okay, as you have mentioned, and
Mm-hmm.
Suni also mentioned it, there are
Mm-hmm.
core principles of auditing.
Mm-hmm.
You can use that core principles to audit almost anything.
Right.
Okay, so that's what we want to know. What is the core things that you must ask when you are auditing a control so that you know that you are doing an effective auditing? Just like you mentioned segregation of duties, you also
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that the first thing is policy. So
Mm-hmm.
we want to list it one to the end. So first thing you would do, you ask for the policy or the procedures and process.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second thing is, so we want to get that. You can either explain it one by one, so that when we watch the video, we'll make a note to it. Or if you have time, you could also break it down like you did here. So I'm thinking segregation of duties might be, will be number what? Number three, number four, number five. Are you
Mm-hmm.
understanding me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we'll, so that we will come away and say, okay, if I have this control, um, maybe I might not even know exactly what to do after reading the objective, but then I say, okay, I'll go to my questions. I need this, I need that. Or you look at the evidences they gave you and you look at your questions you're supposed to ask. Then maybe number two, number four are missing. Then you can ask them those questions. And believe it or not, what I understood too is that when you go to an engagement and they give you controls to test, if you are not asking questions, then your manager will start wondering if you really know what you're doing, because you really need to ask questions. And then when you ask questions, they will say, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. So if we are armed with list of things to look through, not all, I mean, it might not be 100%, but at least a guiding principle that we should use.
Mm,
If you itemize it for us like this, because we'll learn very well by number one is this, number two is this. We learn easily that way than just a blanket information.
okay.
Yeah.
Mm. Next thing I'll ask is how are the things working in the system now, in the software.
Okay.
Okay. Now you know that there is a segregation of duties. You have the, I'll say, initiator of transaction is different, should be different. Bank has designed everything, right? Okay. Okay. Now what is an audit? Let's get a fundamental question.
Yes.
Basic question. What is an audit?
Can somebody help us with that?
Audit is testing of controls to ensure that it's working with or according to the compliance standards set by the establishment.
Right. Okay. Anybody else?
Let me try. Mm. Okay, let me try. An audit.
Okay,
An audit is an independent examination of financial or information or. Did I get it right?
Okay.
Is it right?
Okay. Okay. Let me give you a basic. Okay. Rule of thumb. Audit is comparison of two things. Okay. Now this comparison can be what needs to be done and what is being done. Okay. Now the rule says that on a freeway you should drive the vehicle at 60 miles per hour. Okay. And you are driving at say 80 miles an hour. So I'll compare what is required and what is being done. So audit is always a comparison of two things. One, what is required to be done and what is being done. So it cannot be a solo performance in an audit. It has to be always two things in audit. So what is required and what is being done. So we are always comparing two things in audit. That's the fundamental basic idea. Did you get my point?
Yes.
That's the simplest way I can explain to you is in an audit case.
Yeah, that's a very good example. What needs to be done and what is being done, right?
Right. So always remember these two things.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start questioning is when I say policy requires that access control should be approved by say so and so person in the organization, by the HR manager or by the person by the process owner under whom, or the process supervisor or his immediate supervisor should approve the access. This is a policy requirement. So how will you compare it? As an auditor, you will go into the system and see whether this is being followed or no. So you're comparing two things. One is your policy requires to have an user access in such and such a way. And when you see the output, when you see whether this is being followed in the system, you're comparing it with the system, that the policy is being properly implemented or not. You getting the point now?
I'm watching. I'm watching.
All right. So yeah. So once we have this fundamental idea set in your core, then auditing becomes easy. Now, Chidi, you mentioned as to what is the next step that you would require to do in this case. You go and you question as to whether the process is being correctly followed or no with the process owners, or you will first have an inquiry as to what is the process being followed. You will go through the system, you will walk through the system and understand whether the user part is correctly being managed or no. Okay.
All right.
All right, getting the point now. And then you will have all those questions, the 5 Ws and the hows. When, where, what, where, how it is done, who is doing it, what is he doing, where is he doing, and when it is done, and all those 5 Ws and how would be your questions.
What I would like you to do for us by the end of the course is to
Mm-hmm.
make a table
Mm-hmm.
for us with all these things you're saying, the who's, and just itemize it for us so that somebody can look at that table and
Mm-hmm.
form and get an understanding how to perform an audit or get a quick understanding of what they need to do in testing and in control.
I have a
Just
question.
huh?
Can you make that table similar to like a family tree? Like, say you get a situation, and then you can go left or right, and then you say like, if they answer this question, you go this route. If they answer that question, you go that route, and then you just keep going down until you get to your source.
hmm So look into that so that towards the end of it, when we're doing practical, when you're teaching us how to do those controls that we got from SUNY, then you will provide that table for us. I'm also gonna try to go through the videos, see if I can put one up, but it will be better coming from an expert like you. I'm not a subject matter expert. You are. So yours will be authentic. Sorry to give you such an assignment, but it will really help us out as what do they call us in the industry?
Mm-hmm.
What do they call newcomers in the industry? Well, I'm running out of the
Freshers.
freshers, right? As freshers, exactly. So it will help us as freshers to really rub shoulder with the seasoned people. So we're not gonna look so fresh in the industry. Mhm.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
In IT field, right? We are
Mm-hmm.
working with a team. So in that team, are they going to specify like, okay, this is your role, uh, and all that? Like, how are you going to know this is my role for me to be able to gain more information about the organization, or what and what do I have to work on? Do they give it like um let me just say specific
I
duties
I
that your team will.
I I understand her question. Did I don't know if you came to one of the classes that I did. I posted a diagram about roles, how many, everything about auditing. Let me see the drop that. Everything about auditing, I posted that. In auditing,
No, I, I saw what you posted and I was in a class too. But what
okay.
I'm trying to say is like we're in a team, right? So we have the team manager and all that. So are we gonna be assigned on a?
We can hear you. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was in the class. I saw the diagram that you talked about. So what I'm actually asking is, for example, we're in the team, right? We're on a project. We have the project manager and all that. So I want to know, like, what kind of are they going to assign us like a specific role that we have to play,
The,
to be able to get that project done? Or because
yes,
I was in the class, I understand what you
Yes.
said.
they would every day. Okay, the team mostly is comprised of the manager, a senior IT auditor, and an auditor. And every day you are assigned controls to test. Every day, they will give you controls to test. They might give you controls to test for the week, but it will be three a day. So you pick the three that you want to do each day. Now, if and the
No,
same thing they will.
I'm talking about meditation, like the policy and all that, like some information that you have to get from the organization. Like, how am I going to put it now?
You
For
you are
example, what is saying? Is it like, are they going to be a specific role that each and everybody got to play? Like, okay, you might say, okay, Mr. Chidi, you're going to be the one to conduct the stand-up meeting with the organization, or one chuku, you're going to
okay.
be the one
Okay.
to gather the policy and procedures or the standards. That's what I'm trying
Okay,
to
okay, okay.
do.
Well, okay. Yeah, Sonny, you might, Chandan, you can help on that. What I was talking about is my
I'm
experience.
sorry to cut you short. Just to add to the question, so you can answer everything at once, right?
Okay.
Do you get every time you get a job to do? Is it always a teamwork, or there are times where you have to work by yourself?
There's a team.
Okay.
There's a team, but you still have to work by yourself. The team is comprised of the manager, senior IT auditor, and the auditor. And everybody is assigned a specific,
Job role.
a specific thing to do. And that specific thing to do, since you're working remote, you're going to do it by yourself. But if you have questions, you ask the manager.
Okay.
Help us out.
Chidi, this scenario has changed from any engagement to engagement. I mean, in your scenario, you got controls, weekly controls, or you got controls every day to test. There will be scenario wherein you will be assigned to one process. Okay, and you will be asked that you need to complete this in 3 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, so you will have time to actually uh, go to the I'll say to actually understand the process. In between, you have to understand the process. You have to interview the clients. You will have to test the controls, and then also obtain all the evidences and test the controls, and then you need to validate whether the evidences are correct or no. If these evidences are correct, then you document what you have observed. Chidi, I remember when you had shown me the documentation, you had a step by step update as well, that I inquired with so and so person for this control. He informed that there are no changes to this, or there are no occurrences of such incidences, or there are no errors or exceptions being reported.
Right.
Now, this is what you documented. This is what you observed, right?
Right.
Okay, so you might not have access all the time to the process owners, or there might be scenarios wherein you will be given a one specific process, and also a deadline that you need to complete this control in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or say maybe whatever the period, maybe 10 days or something like that, and you go on with the testing part. It's not necessary that you will not have access to the process owners. uh, you may have access to the process owners wherein you can inquire as to whether the process, what is the process and how it is working correctly or not. The thing is, you need to prepare before the audit as to what you need to do.
Now help us with what indeed he was asking, because I was explaining the part
Mm-hmm.
of the, you already given the control, they've already done the field work. Okay, but
Mm-hmm.
she's talking about assuming you are involved in the field work.
Mm-hmm.
That's where her question was. Assuming you're involved in the field work, how are the job responsible, if are there specific job responsibilities assigned to different people? Right?
Uh,
Right, indeed. That's
yes.
what you were saying, right?
Yeah. So in a team, okay, when I was in US, I worked in a team wherein we had, okay, I'll give my scenario. When I was working for SOX in US, uh, what was done was that this company in which we were working was in manpower supply or resource staffing solutions. So what they used to do, they used to hire people on their roles, and they worked as contractors and gave those people to another company for their work. Say a software company requires 20 resources, and they don't want to hire people on their payroll. So what they will do, they will ask this company to hire people on their roles, and these people will be paid at an hourly rate of as agreed between the client and your between the client and this company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they had multiple units, so and multiple softwares doing this. So I was assigned a task wherein I was required to authorize this payroll software or test this payroll software. I was assigned something which uh, that you need to see whether the rates which are being entered in the system are correctly done or no. So I was assigned the whole thing, and I was given 2 weeks to test each of the application.
Mm.
Okay. Now there were like something like 8 people in the team, and everybody was assigned with 2 applications or 3 applications at a time. One of the core members of the team or the senior member of the team was assigned with a task wherein he was given the most critical ones, the administrators and log review and all those things were assigned to him, who was the most senior most guy in the team. So we were assigned controls, we were assigned the applications, and then we started with the testing as to for my specific area, what are the controls, what are the things they are doing, what is the process narrative, and I started with the process narrative and asked them what are the things. Then we went to the process owners or the people from the who are doing the development part, and ask them what are the how do you do the development, what are the change management process, what is the change request process, is there any job scheduling, because we were assigned those areas in this organization. So we tested from each angle, from a change management angle, from a backup restoration angle, then logical access controls, then what are the change management controls, how they create users, how they delete users. Then we had those physical access controls from a server room as to uh, who has access to the server room, who is doing, why is the server room access required, how are the access to premises being controlled, or how is this being granted. So all these things we checked in this process.
Mm.
So, I mean, in your scenario, what happened is that you were given a control and you didn't have access to directly access to the process owners. There was somebody in the process team who was managing the project, or who was the project manager, was doing the testing, was doing the coordination for you.
Right. Right.
Okay, so the scenario changes from testing to testing. So if a client requirement is that you need to do the walkthrough and everything, then you may have a direct access to the process owner, and you might ask him a lot of questions and whatever clarifications you require.
Now, what Ndidi was also asking is, assuming that you guys, okay, I guess you answered it. Everybody is given a control to test, and then you can ask the process owner if they haven't done any walkthrough, right? You can ask them
Hmm.
the questions.
Hmm. Yeah. What then there will be walkthrough process, and the walkthrough process should be that as we discussed, it should be all the questions you have as to what is the process you go with the policy and the procedure.
Mhm. Okay. But is it assigned to specific people to ask the question? Is it only one person that does it?
Okay. Uh,
Or is it
it, it
different from company to company?
it's different from company to company.
Okay. But in your experience,
Hmm.
was it assigned to different people in the team to ask different questions during walkthrough? Or is it the lead that will be asking the questions in walkthrough?
In my scenario, we were assigned each application. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, I was the whole and soul. I solely responsible for testing and everything. My man
Were you
after
part
that.
of the walkthrough? Were you part of the walkthrough, or was it done before assigning it to you?
No. I was supposed to do the walkthrough and everything.
Okay, okay,
Okay. So I did the walkthrough. I documented everything. I went back to my manager, showed him what I have done.
okay.
Okay. Showed him that there was a in change management there was a change which required. Uh, So in my scenario, I showed the results to change to my manager, and there was certain issues in change management process, and we identified issues in the backup process as well.
Okay.
So now my manager went back to their team, and he took me along with him, and showed them that these are the controls and the deviations that we observe.
Okay. Now
So
this
there was a log, huh?
is this from your walkthrough, or is this from your testing? I guess from you use what you got in walkthrough to do your testing then.
Right. So after the walkthrough, I did the testing. I obtained all the samples and everything.
Okay.
And after that, I went first. I showed the walkthrough results to him, and then I showed him the results of the testing. And then where we concluded that there are certain deviations, especially in case of backup, we observed that there is very little when a backup fails, they were not taking any remedial actions.
Okay.
Okay, so this was an issue which was raised with the management, and management had to agree that in certain cases, if the backup was failed, they did not initiate any transaction or any did not raise any ticket, and the backup could not be completed. So this was done by my manager to ensure that I did all the testing. I showed him the results. He validated those results. Then we had a discussion with the management, and he was leading the whole discussions
Right.
for the test results. And once the management agreed, then we prepared an audit report and showed them that these are the deviations that we observed.
Okay. Any more questions from anybody? Did that answer your questions, or you still have more questions?
Yes, you did. Let me ask, like you said, there's no stupid question, right?
No, there's no. Please, please.
Yep.
There's no stupid questions.
Let me ask, like, let me say for like doing an IT audit, right? And I come
Mm-hmm.
across a materially significant findings. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
is it? Do I have to communicate it with my manager immediately, or I have to wait at the end of the audit before I can be able to communicate it with the manager?
I think if there is a significant deficiency, you need to communicate immediately.
Okay.
Okay, so that he is aware and he can help you with whether this is correct or no. If he thinks there's a significant deficiency and you need to then he can immediately escalate it, or you can stop the audit and check if this is a major deviation.
Mhm. Mhm. See, that's a super question there.
No, this is not a stupid question. This is
No,
a
I
very
say
very valid question.
it's a super question.
It's a very good question.
It's a very great, yeah, it's a great question. Hmm.
Because escalation should happen immediately and the manage I mean if you wait till the end and manager will think that you're not testing it properly. If you raise the
Right.
issue, then he will know that you're doing a right job.
Hmm. 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 Okay. Okay. Any more questions, guys? Before he continues, I guess, or well, we're almost at 9 o'clock. Yeah, that's a good explanation for us today. So make a note on your notebook to make a
You can put
table.
that on WhatsApp, I think.
Huh?
You can put that on WhatsApp.
Okay, okay.
I'll
What I need you to do for us at the end?
yep.
Okay, all right. I can send it to you on WhatsApp. That's fine.
All right.
Battery issues. Not available plug in. Batteries. Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Let me say, like for we have an IT project right going on, and we
Mm-hmm.
need to have a stand-up meeting or maybe a walkthrough meeting, right? On that
Mm-hmm.
walkthrough meeting, do we have to disclose uh, the organization data or as a team, or we have to do it individually?
Stand up means you're into DevOps or sprints or agile. You're following agile methodology.
Okay, let me maybe I put it right the first time. Like for example, now like when doing an IT audit, right? The process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Most of the data of the organization is going to be disclosed to the IT team, right? So when
Mm-hmm.
doing stand up meeting, do we have to like maybe for example you have some uh, how am I gonna put it? Um,
I think I have an idea what you're trying to say. You're trying to say if you are having a meeting and you have to answer some questions, do you disclose the data that you have from your assignment? Is that what you're trying to say?
yeah, or maybe go direct to the project manager.
Yeah, I don't think I know that the auditee's information is private, but it's not private to the member of the teams. The only thing is that the member of the team cannot take it outside of that team. You know that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chandler. Do you understand what she's trying to ask you?
Okay, if the project related data is relevant for the team, you need to share it definitely.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and okay, as an auditor, I know that the process owner would like to hide a lot of things from me. Uh, so you need to have that inquisitive mind or the questioning mind to get the information right. Okay, the other day we were doing an audit. We are currently doing an audit, and we are just concluding that it's in Singapore, and it's for a fintech company. Now they have technological risk management guidelines being issued to them, issued to all the fintech companies and or the financial services company in the or the banking industry in Singapore. And we observed that they have a lot of policies, all the right policies which are required under the mass guidelines or the Singapore guidelines. Okay, but when we checked, they didn't have the procedures there. So we said, boss, you have all the policies and everything, but you do not have the procedures, and this will be an adverse remark. So until now, these auditees, I'm telling you what is the practical scenario, what happens. Until now, these auditees were not showing me the relevant part or what we were asking for. And suddenly he started throwing things at me, sir, we have this procedure. Then he went into the system and showed me what is the procedure and how it is documented, what is the step-by-step approach and everything. So when I said, okay, you have this, but you do not have this. Oh, I have this also. So he showed me all the other procedures as well. Okay, you're showing me this procedure that in what was that? I think it was related to the SIEM solutions and whether the user review happens or no. And he showed me the procedure how the user review happens. And then I said, okay, you're showing me the procedure. Now tell me how was it practically implemented. Then he showed me all the mailers that user review was being conducted, and these are the discrepancies which were there. So once I started saying him, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, then he started showing me everything. So we were able, so a lot of audit points got out because they were following the procedures which were required and they didn't share the relevant evidences. So that's how it happened. I mean.
Gotcha.
So sometimes going saying to the client, okay, this is not happening. I think this is an adverse thing, and then they will come to the point and show you what's actually being done, and you can go more in depth in the audit part. All right. I think we can conclude the class for today.
You're the teacher. If you're done, then you're done.
Yep. All right. Other thing is next week, I think all are paying by next week. And once we get the confirmation for all the payments, then we will start with the next week's class. GD?
Could you say that again?
Next week's class will be based on certain things, OS level and DB. I hope Ishwar or Sunil will be back for the next week. And I guess the payments will be completed by all the candidates by next week so that we can have the class next week.
Okay.
Okay.
Guys, anybody want to say something?
Are we ending the class by next week, or are we still going having 1 or 2 weeks to go?
Because because we want to complete the whole process. When we had initial this thing, Chidi mentioned that we had agreed that 50% before the this thing and for 50% after the third session. So I hope you all complete the payment by next week.
My question is the class going to, are we ending the class by next week?
No. I think it will be one more session, 2 weeks more. Because we have to cover right now ITGC part as well as SOC 2 part. So these are two major areas we need to cover. And this will be very critical.
Yes, and also the practical.
Practical part of it.
Right. And these are the main areas. So
What you're talking about next week, is your Monday over there, right?